Hello everyone, I'm Rakshit Naresh. I'm the product manager for ColdFusion at Adobe. What I'll be doing today is to show you the new powerful performance monitoring toolset in ColdFusion 2018. Let's take a look. Now, before I get into the details, some quick background as well. We no longer have the server monitor in ColdFusion 2018. Server monitor is now replaced by this extremely powerful performance monitoring toolset. Let me now log into the system. There are three things that make performance monitoring toolset extremely powerful. The first one is it is a standalone system. So what I mean by that is the performance monitoring toolset itself is running on a different machine outside of your ColdFusion servers. So you might have multiple ColdFusion servers running on its own different machines. The performance monitoring toolset itself will run on a different machine. Now the data that is collected from the monitoring from your ColdFusion servers is pumped into the performance monitoring toolset, which has a powerful distributed data store. Now, the neat thing about this architecture is there is hardly any overload on the system because monitoring is turned on. As you probably know, on your production servers, we want to ensure that you have the least amount of overhead, but still have all the data required to perform your performance analysis, improve the performance of your application, scale your systems better. That is why this architecture. I have some data around this as well. So based on our testing, we have seen that there is zero overhead. Yes, zero overhead on your production systems until up till let's say 18,000 requests per second. So for in most scenarios, there is zero overhead on your production system. So you can pretty much monitor your systems 24/7 with the new powerful performance monitoring toolset. The second reason why the system is powerful is because of the topology and auto discovery screen. So let me just show you this. So when you log into your system first, you will actually see a pop-up that will walk you through adding servers into the monitoring system. So we have something known as the auto discovery. All your ColdFusion servers in the system will be auto discovered like this. So I have auto discovery enabled right here. There is an instance available. All I have to do to enable tracking on this is just say enable and say submit, and this will be added to my list of tracked servers straight away. So let me just close that. Now in my tracked servers, I can see all the three servers that I have added. I just added one. I already had these two servers over there. Now I added the third one through auto discovery. Not just that, we also have the topology. Now this is really cool because it figures out your system topology just by the incoming request. As you can see there, I have two websites. One is adobe.com, the other is coldfusion.com. So those are the two sites that I've configured on IIS. And I have two instances in a cluster, instance 1 and instance 2. If I have any database requests happening now, it'll show the database as well in the topology. I don't have any active requests. That's the reason it's not showing up in the topology. Not just the database, it also shows the external services. So let's say you have some outgoing HTTP calls, it'll also show you that as well. The nice thing about the topology is that it also shows you the average response time. It also shows you the status right here. If it's normal, needs attention, critical, or inactive. So just from the topology page, you get a complete view of your system and you can drill down into any specific section by just clicking on it. Now, what you see here is a ColdFusion cluster created within the ColdFusion administrator. Now, let's say you're not using the clustering feature of ColdFusion, but you have, let's say, a hardware load balancer or Amazon's ELB to load balance across your servers. How do you cluster them? You may still want to create a group out of it. So for that, we have something called as groups. The first thing is clusters within ColdFusion will be auto-detected and shown as a cluster here. But in case if you want to create a group of your own in conditions where you may have a hardware load balancer, that is when you go to groups under settings and create a group. You can provide a group, let's say call it a group 1 as the name, and you can select the servers you want and create a group. The groups will start showing up in the topology page once you create it, and you can also monitor them, monitor all the applications in the group and treat them as a cluster. So the average response time or any other metrics that we collect, it can also be across a group of ColdFusion servers for which you've created a corresponding group within the performance monitoring toolset. The third reason why performance monitoring toolset is powerful is because it does end-to-end monitoring, starting right from the connector that connects your web server and the ColdFusion server. It tracks the connectors really well. It also does some auto-tuning. I'll get to that in just a bit. Then the system metrics of your ColdFusion server, of the system where your ColdFusion server is running. Then it also gives you metrics associated within your ColdFusion server itself. And it also drills down into specific applications. So whatever specific line or few lines of code have an issue, we have a solution for that as well. Not just the application, it also tracks your database calls, your external services call going out of the system, be it a CF HTTP call or a CF mail call. All of these can be tracked within the performance monitoring toolset. It's not just about external services. You can also track incoming services. So let's say if there is a REST call coming into your system, you can track that too. It is a fully end-to-end solution using which you can track any part of your system. Now let's move on to the overview screen. So this is pretty much the first screen that shows up when you log into the system. Once you have servers auto-discovered and you've configured your servers, it shows the number of sites. It shows the health score of the various sites. Currently it's inactive because I don't have any active requests happening. It shows the health of your individual nodes. Here is the average response time of your entire cluster. So I have the cluster selected here. I've called it the Adobe cluster. So it shows me the average response time across the cluster and the average throughput on that cluster as well. So it shows me quite a few metrics here, the amount of time spent in the connector, the server, the database, and external services. I can actually drill down here. So when I click on this, it shows me at that specific instance, which were the calls that were made. You can drill down further into that and figure out a lot of details about a specific URL. So that's the overview screen. Now let's look at the first component in your system, which is the connector. It shows me the number, as you can see in the graph, for the 2 sites that I have configured. It shows me the busy connections on those servers, the average response time on those servers, and it also does auto tuning. So it shows me the metrics associated at that specific point now, the number of busy connections, the pool size. Now what auto tuning does is, let's say at some instant you have busy connections beyond your pool size. So auto-tuning ensures that the pool size is reconfigured without your intervention so that your system continues to perform as is and you don't get any 503 errors at all. So connector tuning is baked in, so you don't have to worry about tuning your connectors at all with this new system. It also shows me the list of sites in the cluster. I can drill down further, and it also shows me the load across the sites as well. We now looked at the connector, the very first component in your system, the very first entry point of your system. Now let's go back to the overview page, and I can drill down into specific instances as well. So these are 2 nodes that I have. So it is still showing me the cluster. Now I can click on a particular instance. So let's say I want to figure out the system metrics associated with this server, where the server is running. I can click on that and go to the system tab. It shows me a wealth of information here overall CPU usage, system CPU usage, and the JVM CPU usage, the system memory. At every instant, I can drill down and figure out which are the URLs that contributed to this tiny memory surge that you see there, the network I/O that's happening, and also the disk I/O at a specific point of time. Now, all these graphs are synchronized if you notice. So if I move my mouse around here, all the data points associated with the same timeline are showed across the graphs. We saw the system metrics. What about the JVM metrics of your ColdFusion server? So this is the JVM tab that shows the use committed and max memory available on the heap and the non-heap. It also shows the distribution within the heap, Eden, Old Gen, and Survivor space for both heap and non-heap. It also shows me garbage collection details. For instance, there is a major and a minor GC that happened here. It also shows the JVM CPU usage versus total GC. So here you can see the total number of the JVM CPU for garbage collection as well as the JVM CPU usage at that specific point of time. It shows you the count of garbage collection that happened at specific time intervals. You also see the classes that got loaded and unloaded at a specific point. Along with this, within the JVM, it also gives you thread metrics, the number of active threads, max active threads, and daemon threads as well. It also gives you information about your thread pool, both AJP as well as HTTP. So typically, your admin will always run on HTTP. ColdFusion administrator will run on HTTP NIO that you see there, and AJP is where you have your connectors configured. If you notice right on the screen, you can also take a thread dump at any specific point of time. You can take a heap dump as well and also initiate garbage collection. For your heap dump, you can view the results in Visual VM or the Eclipse Mac tool or Memory Analyzer tool as well, so that you get a good understanding of which objects are consuming how much amount of memory. So that's the JVM metrics. There is also ColdFusion Metrics or CF Metrics. It shows you the request throttle data, the average queue size and average throttle memory as well, the overall request queue size as well. So I can double click on this and get more details about it. There is component cache size and thread metrics for all the CF thread metrics as well. Whole bunch of data source connection metrics and the sessions. So this is quite important when you're debugging your performance issues, right? The number of active sessions and the number of expired sessions as well. Let me just go back to overview and show you one other really interesting thing. So I can click on a specific point on the throughput. It shows me the list of URLs. Now I can also go drill down into this and it shows me a full breakup of this particular URL. How much time was spent in the server, how much time in the database, how much time in external services. And it gives you a lot of additional information about this page. Which server was it running, what was the database calls made, external service calls that were made, which were the tags and functions that were used, error and timeout, as well as the memory consumption at that specific for that specific URL. Now let me just go back to, let me show you the view from the topology screen. So I can click on a specific instance and it will give me instance specific data from the topology screen as well. We saw system, we saw CF metrics, we saw JVM. It also gives you information about the cache regions in your system. And this is interesting, active monitoring. The data that shows up is all for completed requests. What about if there are any current requests? How do you monitor those? For those, we have something called as active monitoring. It shows you the current set of requests, CF thread and queries, active queries happening at this instant. As you can see here, it shows you the URL, thread, the client IP. It also gives you some actions. You can kill a particular request as well if you think it is hogging your system for some reason. At this point, we saw the connector, we saw the system metrics, we saw a whole range of server metrics as well. Now let's look at the important one, which is the database. Here it shows you a neat graph about average query time, which were the applications that are invoking a specific query as well. You can figure that out right away. You can also figure out the throughput associated on your database, which are my top slow queries, and figure out more details about that as well. It gives you information about the queries in general, invocations, references. All this is available as a part of the system here. It also shows you information about query cache, number of queries per individual nodes as well, queries split across application as well, SQL distribution, so which were the SQL statements associated with particular queries, and also CF transactions. So if I have any transactions associated, it will also show up right here. So you can drill down into every single detail about your database calls happening from ColdFusion. At this point, we looked at connectors, system, ColdFusion server, and database. Let's quickly look at external services. So if you have any outgoing calls from within ColdFusion server, you can track those easily. For instance, some of you may even know that in many occasions, it's not the ColdFusion server that is the bottleneck, but it could be your CF/HTTP calls that are going out that are taking a lot of time. You can easily figure that out using the external services monitor that we have. So here it shows me that CF/HTTP is taking some time. If you can also drill down into various external services that we have, CF/HTTP. If there is FTP, you can drill down about those here. We support a whole range of external service calls within the external services monitor. It also shows you the node distribution for each of those calls happening and the application distribution. So which application made that external services call. If it's CF/HTTP, you also get to see the methods associated, multi-part distribution, status code, as well as the URL distribution for those individual calls happening from within ColdFusion. Similarly, you can track all the incoming services, be it a REST call or a SOAP call, or even an RPC call. It shows you the top slow URLs for this REST tab under this. And again, you'll get a lot more drill down information when you double click on this. At this point, we looked at connectors, system, ColdFusion server, database, external services, both incoming and outgoing. Now let's take a look at applications as well. So if you go back to overview, in fact, let me just go to the system page here. So here you will see application information as well. So it gives you overview about this cluster. It also gives me a lot of details about the applications in that cluster. It gives me any neat ART of individual applications as well, so that I can figure out which are my applications that are running slow, and if something is really critical, I can actually drill down into that one specific application. If that application is really important for me, I can drill down into that as well. It shows me the list of applications. It also shows me health score. So across the system, for your system health, connector health, application health, including your ColdFusion server health, we have something called as the health score. I'll show you where you can configure the health score. So it is based on a metric. We use a set of parameters to compute the health of your system or your server. I'll show you where you can configure that based on your individual needs as well. So this is applications. Now, how do I find out specific lines of code that have issues potentially? So let's say one of my applications is taking too much of time. I need to drill down further. For that, we have a built-in code profiler as well. So I can select a specific server. I can also choose memory profiling and start profiling. Here I already have a set of URLs that have been profiled, so I can get inside this and see more details. So I can also import this code profiling result, download it, and then import it into ColdFusion Builder that shows me the complete code flow as well as the exact line number. So I can click on a specific section in the report that shows up when I import it within ColdFusion Builder, and it shows me the exact line number of that code flow. It takes me to the exact line within the IDE. The last one that I want to show you is the settings page. Here it shows the list of ColdFusion servers that you have configured, both tracked and untracked servers. The group setting, we already saw that. It also lets you add additional users. There is also something called as archiving. As I said, we have a high performing distributed data store, and that gets a lot of data from within from the ColdFusion servers. Now you can archive data from within the performance monitoring toolset. So let's say the data size is increasing a lot and you want to archive it for future use, you can go ahead and archive it. You can also delete data as well. So you can completely delete the data. You can also create an archiving schedule. So any data older than 30 days. So let's say I'm only interested in a month's data. I can clearly say that archive every other data after 30 days. So there will be a schedule that using which you can archive your data for future, for in case if you want it at a later point of time, you can archive it, or you can straight away purge the data as well. So settings under the Adobe cluster as well. So here is where I can enable basic monitoring or advanced monitoring, enable connected tuning as well. And here is where you can configure the health score, what contributes to your health, overall health. You can provide a baseline as well as the weightage associated for the health score. The baseline is here for configuring health score. This is your baseline. So anything for ART gets weightage of 1, where the baseline is 5000 milliseconds. So similarly, you can also configure the percentage associated and the weightage to configure your health scores. We have a really powerful alerting system as well. So this is the JVM CPU usage alert mechanism. So for instance, I can make this active and say JVM usage that is more than 90% at all times during the last 300 seconds. So I can create an alert at this specific point of time, or when this event happens. I can also indicate the action associated. I can say invoke the CFC or trigger a thread dump, post on Slack. All of this is possible once I make this active. So that's the JVM CPU usage alert. We also have quite a range of different alerts, all associated with JVM right here. There is also system alerts that you can configure, slow server, timeout, unresponsive server, all of these. We also have connector alerts as well. So you can configure that here. And in the settings, how do you want the alert to reach you? So you can configure emails and also Slack. So Slack is really popular these days, right? So I can provide a Slack webhook URL so that we post it on Slack as well. So this is a real quick introduction into the powerful system that is coming up with ColdFusion 2018. So really excited about this feature and hope you like this and give us a lot of feedback. Thank you.